There is a specific kind of frustration many Indian women carry and almost never talk about it openly because talking about it feels disloyal, feels like a betrayal of someone who is also, in her own way, struggling. It is a frustration of being policed by another woman, not a stranger, someone close. A sister-in-law who comments on how you dress when you go out, a cousin who asks with great concern why you came home so late, a neighbor auntie who notes loudly that your children seem to spend a lot of time with the help, a colleague who questions gently but persistently whether your choices are appropriate for a woman in your position. The frustration is layered because on one level you are angry. That is none of her business. She has no right. Why is she doing this? And on another level you feel something more complicated, a guilt that she is also a woman, that she is also inside a system that has not been particularly kind to her. That directing your anger at her feels like punching sideways when the thing you are actually angry at is much larger and much harder to confront. I want to talk today about that woman, who she is, why she does what she does, and what it means for you and for both of you when you begin to see her clearly. The surface reading of this dynamic is straightforward. She is enforcing patriarchy. She has internalized the rules so completely that she has become their enforcer. She polices other women because she was policed, and rather than questioning the system, she has chosen to uphold it. She is complicit. She is the system's agent. And then there is the truth in this reading. It is not wrong. The dynamic it describes is real and it has real consequences. But I think this reading, while accurate, is incomplete. And that part it leaves out is the part that matters most if you actually want to understand what is happening and what, if anything, can shift. The surface reading treats her as a villain, or at best as a cautionary tale. A woman who failed to develop consciousness, and this framing, while satisfying in the short term, does something unhelpful. It turns a structural problem into a character problem. It locates the issue in her choices, her limitations, her failure of solidarity, rather than in the system that produced her. And when you locate a structural problem in an individual, you lose your ability to see the structure, which means you lose your ability to address it. What is actually happening is that there are two women in this scene, and both of them are casualties of the same system. They have been positioned on the opposite sides of it. Let me explain what I mean. The woman who polices you, the one who comments, who questions, who monitors is not doing this from a position of freedom. She is doing it from a position of profound constraint, and the policing is in a very specific way the only power available to her inside that constraint. Think about what her life has required of her. She almost certainly gave up things, ambitions, freedoms, versions of herself in order to fit inside the role that was available to her. She adjusted, she complied, she made herself acceptable, and she did this not because she was weak but because the cost of not doing it in her specific circumstances was too high. Now here you are, making different choices, going out late or dressing differently or prioritizing your career or refusing to manage the things she managed without question. And your freedom, your ability to make choices she was not able to make, does something to her that she may not even be fully conscious of. It threatens the meaning of her sacrifice. If you can do what she did not do, and the world does not end, and you are not punished, and your marriage does not fall apart, then what was her compliance for? What did her sacrifice mean? If the rules she followed so carefully were not actually necessary, then she gave something up for nothing, and that is a very painful thing to confront. So instead of confronting it, because confronting it would require dismantling the story she has built her entire life around, she does something else. She tries to bring you back into the system. She polices you, not to hurt you, to protect the meaning of her own life. This is one of the oldest and most effective mechanisms of social control I know, and it works precisely because it does not require any external enforcement. The system does not need men to police women's behavior, it trains women to police each other. In India, the training begins very early. Girls learn long before they can articulate it that certain behaviors attract social consequences, not from men directly, but from the women around them, from mothers who say quietly, don't attract attention, from the aunts who note with gentle concern that she is becoming too much, from older cousins who warn her about what the world will say. And this is not cruelty, it's often genuine protection. The mother who tells her daughter not to attract attention is operating from real knowledge of what happens to girls who attract the wrong kind. She is trying to protect her child from a world she knows is not safe. The warning is real. The danger it describes is real, but the protection has a cost. Because what it teaches the girl underneath that specific warning is this: your safety depends on your compliance. The way you stay protected is by staying acceptable. And the women around you will monitor that acceptability for your own good. So she grows up with a committee in her head, a chorus of women's voices that checks their choices against the standard before she acts. And when she becomes an adult, when she has daughters of her own, or daughter-in-law, or younger women in her orbit, that committee externalizes. She becomes the voice she heard, because that is what love looked like to her. That is what protection looked like. This is how systems reproduce themselves, not through force, through love that has been weaponized without anyone intending for it to be. The most complicated version of this dynamic, the one with the most grief in it, is between sister-in-law. You enter a family, you bring with you a version of yourself that was shaped by different circumstances, different freedoms, a different relationship to the rules. And the woman who was there before you, who entered the same family under different terms, who gave more up, who adjusted further, watches you. And what she sees is not just you. She sees the contrast. She sees everything she did not have the option to do, or the courage to do, or the support to do. And that contrast is unbearable in a way she cannot say directly. So it comes out sideways as criticism, as monitoring, as a persistent sense that you are doing something wrong that she needs to correct. And you receive it as hostility, as jealous, maybe, as a woman who is fundamentally against you. But what is actually in the room underneath the hostility is grief. Is her grief for herself, for the choices she did not make or could not make, for the life that was available to you that was not available to her. And here is what I want to say carefully: her grief does not make her behavior acceptable. She does not have the right to restrict your choices because she could not make them herself. That is not how it works. Her pain is real. Her right to impose it on you is not. But when you see the grief underneath the policing, when you can hold her behavior and it's so simultaneously, something shifts in how you carry it. It stops being personal. It becomes structural, and when something becomes structural, you can stop fighting the individual and start seeing the system. Two things change. The first is in you. The anger doesn't disappear. It shouldn't, because the behavior is genuinely intrusive and you are right to resist it. But it becomes less consuming because you are no longer fighting someone who is fundamentally against you. You are navigating someone who is caught in the same system you are, just from a different position inside it. That distinction matters. It means you can hold a boundary without requiring her to be a villain. You can say this is not acceptable without needing to decide that she is a bad person. And holding a boundary without making someone the enemy is a much more sustainable position to occupy. The second thing that changes in the relationship itself, potentially. I want to be honest here. Not every relationship between women in these positions can be repaired or deepened. Some women are too deeply invested in the system. Too much of their identity is organized around having followed the rules for the conversation to go anywhere useful. And that is a reality worth accepting without bitterness. But some women, when they feel genuinely seen, when the conversation shifts from accusation to recognition, when someone acknowledges what she gave up and the cost that it had can soften, she can lower the monitoring, can occasionally become an unexpected ally. because underneath the policing in many cases is a woman who simply never had anyone acknowledge the price she paid, who never had anyone say, I see what this cost you, who has been carrying her own sacrifice in silence, framing it as strength because that was the only frame available, and desperately, though she would never say so, wanting someone to notice. You may not be able to give her that. The relationship may be too fraught, the history too complicated, but knowing it is there, knowing that underneath the critic there is a woman who simply wanted to be seen, changes the quality of what you carry when you walk away from her. I want to end with something that is not a resolution because there is no resolution here that is clean or simple. The dynamic I have described today is produced by a system that has been in a place for generations, and it will not be undone by a single conversation or a change of perspective. But I want to offer something that I think is more useful than a resolution. Two women in this dynamic are not enemies. They are, in a very precise sense, the same person at two different points in the story. One further in, one still arriving, both shaped by the same training, the same warnings, the same chorus of voices that told them safety depended on compliance. The one further is not in your cautionary tale. She is not evidence that you should be grateful for your freedom or more careful with them. She is evidence of what a system does to a woman over time when she has no option but to absorb it. And the one still arriving, you are not her enemy either. You are not rubbing her nose in your choices. You are simply living the life available to you, which happens to be wider than the one that was available to her. The anger between you is real. The friction is real, and it doesn't have to be resolved into warmth to be navigated with clarity. But if you can see what is actually in the room, two women, same system, different positions, the anger loses its most isolating quality. It stops being about her specifically. It becomes about something much larger than either of you. And that, I find, is where it becomes possible to breathe. The relationships between women inside Indian families, what makes them combative, what makes them quietly sustaining, and what it would take to make them genuinely honest is something I have explored at length in my book, Dear Sister, Dear Brother, Letters of Freedom. Not as a self-help guide to managing difficult women, but as an honest look at what the family structure in India does to women who are inside it, and what becomes possible when the people around them begin to see the system they are navigating rather than simply judging the ways they navigate it. If this episode gave you language for something you've been carrying, that book continues the conversation. Details are in the show notes.